All
Okay.
right. Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Glenn, my brother. Probably an ESTP, but we're going to confirm that. And I'll just ask him some questions and verify the letters and then ask him generally what it's like to be an ESTP. But do you want to give just a quick introduction to yourself, Glenn?
Sure. What do you want me to say? What kind of introduction are you looking for?
Anything interesting, anything to do with who you are as a person, how you're different from the family, like just basics though, not like deep psychology yet.
Just basics. Okay. Um, I'm the middle kid, three above, three below. I consider myself kind of the mediator in the family sometimes. My parents, mom and dad go to me when there's problems and they ask my advice. I don't know why, but they do. Um, and I don't know. I've always been able to get along with everybody. People, for some reason, think they can trust me telling me stuff, and that is fun and not fun sometimes. But I've always worked, always gotten along with people. It's easy for me to get along with people. As I'm getting older, and I think this is normal, but I've definitely liked being away from crowds more as I've gotten older too. But that's changed. But I have five kids, got married 17 years ago, converted, so we kind of make each other up that way. But that's me in a nutshell. I do a lot of different things.
You cut out a tiny bit at the end there. Did you say that your wife is more introverted? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
she's more introverted for sure. She's more extroverted now because she was a school teacher and had to learn how to get outside of herself. And then being with me, I'm pretty social, so she's gotten more extroverted that way a little bit too. At least got more comfortable around people.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, and okay. Okay, all right. So, um let's go through the letters, see how they apply to you. But I think how do you know in general that you prefer extroversion over introversion in general?
Because that's my nature.
Yeah.
I I like talking to people. I have a hard time when I'm alone for extended periods of time. I need to be around other people, and I enjoy connecting with other people. I'm really good at sales because of that. I can be really social most of the time, and so naturally I'm good at sales. So kind of
Uh
goes
when
with that.
when did you have your first girlfriend?
I don't know. I guess you said girlfriend, not kiss, not kiss. I started kissing girls when I was pretty young, but girlfriend, I actually didn't have a girlfriend until after high school because I didn't want one during high school. But I kissed a lot of girls.
Yeah. All right. Um, so what about thinking versus feeling? Like can you tell the difference between when someone is more of like a feeling type of person versus a logical thinking type of person?
Yes. Yep. Within a couple minutes of a conversation, you can tell what type of personality they are generally because it depends on how they respond to what you're saying. People will stop and think about it. Um, some people get emotional and have really quick responses. Other people will sit and think, and you can tell they're thinking about it. And you can tell really quickly in the conversation, are they a thinker or are they the other types of personalities where they're going to be outgoing. They just want answers right now. They're impatient, that type of person. So you can tell pretty quick, especially on those extremes. You go from the very most outgoing or not even outgoing going. You have the type that like being bosses, that like being in charge and let everybody know that. And then you have
Yeah.
the people that like being in the background. And you can tell, I mean, that's an extreme, but you can tell pretty quick in a conversation with them where they're at.
Yeah. So and there are like four kind of dimensions. One two for feeling, two for thinking. For thinking, you can have like the philosopher type that are really introverted and they think in that way. And the other is like really assertive and they're trying to make things happen. They're goal oriented. And then you have feeling, which can be extroverted, which would be mm, like evangelical, like preacher type or therapists or people who, I mean, these are stereotypes, but basically people who are really interested in the emotional atmosphere of other people. And then introverted feeling, which is people who are very emotional, but it's like internal. Um, so yeah. And so I heard you talk about like people who kind of go off to their own or like who process things internally, and then people who are more assertive. Um, and I think those could be seen as both logical. But uh, anyway, as far as like, I think the way I see it with you is that you're extremely practical and you just care about making things work and uh, getting things done, um, and doing things that make sense in general. Um, yeah. I mean, the point of this isn't to go through the full list of questions to determine what you are. It's just like it's like you're one of the most clear versions of your personality type that I think I've met. So it's pretty easy, I think, for me to see. So it's more like to confirm to anyone who's watching. Um, but I think that it's pretty clear which type you are. But then the last one's interesting because it's either people tend to be either judgers or perceivers. And the thing about our family is that there are 9 people in our family, and all of them, if I'm right, are judgers except for you. You're a perceiver, which means perceiver means you more go with the flow. You're more dynamic and adaptive. And while other people, they tend to have strong opinions about what they're doing, um, and they kind of hold on to those decisions, and they don't like things being open ended. So I don't know if everyone else has rubbed off on you, or if you see yourself as different, or like, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I've when I was younger, like when I was a kid, I wanted to be a people pleaser. Like I wanted to be accepted and I wanted people to like me. And that part of that, we were homeschooled, so I didn't get a really good social life when I was real little. But by the time I went to junior high, I considered myself kind of like a sad puppy that just wanted people to pay attention to me at first. I didn't know how to act, but it's not because I didn't want to act. I just didn't know how to do it at first. And so I really struggled to figure out myself in junior high when I started being around a lot of people. I liked attention. I knew that, but that kind of stemmed. I don't know. I going back to the people pleaser thing. Like that's probably why I don't judge people. I may judge them inside because I see those key points. You know, especially if you're religious, you have certain things that you pay attention to. And I pay attention to those things. You know, I can look someone over and see a lot of different details about them on face value, but I don't prejudge them because, for one thing, part of being the people pleaser, or in my case, when I'm selling something, I want to benefit them and benefit me. And if I'm judging them and setting up those pretensions before we even start looking at stuff, it's only going to hurt me. Whereas if you want to be a good salesman, the more people you help, the more you help yourself. And so you want to not find those things that are different about you, but find those things that are common about you and focus on that stuff. Find the things that they like doing, regardless of what it is, and focus on that stuff. And so that I think stems from my personality of being a people pleaser. I don't like contention generally. I can handle it, and I've been forced to handle it and learn that, but it didn't come as natural to me because I tried to avoid contentious situations. Um, but I've gotten better as I've gotten older. I've had to get better at it. But generally speaking, I don't prejudge someone when I meet, especially face to face. Social media changes things. It's really dumb how social media has changed how we interact with people, but face to face people are different.
Yeah.
And you don't even, a lot of times you meet someone, you don't even know what their political views are or anything like that until you get into a conversation with them. Some
Yeah.
things are pretty key. And I mean, if they have purple hair and they're complaining when they first see you, then you have a pretty good idea. But
Yeah. A lot of
there,
people wear their
it's
opinions as like costumes.
yep, yeah, it's their identity.
Yeah. So, that's like the people oriented side of it. But what about like when it comes to how you're living the day as you go about it, like getting the things done that you need to do? Do you prefer planning everything in advance, uh, or having things more open-ended? And have you changed over time?
I've changed over time where I had kind of rough idea of plans, but I left a lot of things open-ended when I was younger. Now, to be successful, you have to have some type of plan. So I actually plan my days almost hourly now. Um, what I'm going to do generally during the day. I have hours where I focus on marketing myself for business. And then I have to plan in a time to relax because my brain gets overwhelmed. So I plan a time to relax for a minute. But if you don't, I'm kind of fighting my nature there because I want to have things kind of open-ended and not be stringent, but you can't be successful if you're 100% open-ended all the time. You have to have some type of plan in place and focus on that as much as you can. Otherwise, you're just going to go in circles.
Yeah, and it's my
So that's where it is. I wouldn't say, sorry, I cut you off. There's a slight
yeah,
delay.
there is a delay, huh? Um, I was just gonna say it's in my nature to do the opposite. Like I want to plan everything. And I've had to learn the opposite. Like I've had to learn that you can't be successful if you're completely closed off. You have to adapt to new information. So it's kind of interesting. Everybody kind of
Yeah,
goes towards the middle as they get older.
yeah, you have to have a balance, I think. And the people that are most successful have had to learn to adapt to changes and roll with them. There's not a successful person out there that hasn't failed, and I guarantee they didn't plan to fail. Um, so that's kind of how it goes. You have to adapt with the situation. I feel like generally speaking, I'm very good at adapting to changes, and accepting changes and rolling with it instead of, oh, that goes against my plan. I can't do that. I've always been more able to adapt to it, but I also analyze it as quickly as I can in my brain to see if it's a good option. I don't think it's a good option, then I won't change with it. I'll move somewhere else or adjust the plan. So
Yeah.
I try to do that as we go on, but you gotta have some sort of flexibility. Otherwise, you're going to be pretty miserable in life.
Yeah, and here's like a difference between you and me that's pretty big. It's interesting because we both like machinery and how things work. But you know that when I walk up to something new, I look like an idiot. Like I have no idea how something works just by looking at it the first time. Like I don't know what part is the part you grab and what part is the thing that moves. Like I have to actually look at it for a while to understand it. And I actually have to exert energy to do the logic to be like, okay, that wouldn't make sense for it to work that way. But for you, so one stereotype for the introverted version of your personality is they tend to be mechanics. Like uh, that's actually the name that type is given, the mechanic. And you're not like you do a lot of fixing and working with your hands on various things. Like you've rigged a ton of stuff up from scratch, and you fix cars a ton. And when you walk up to something, it just comes naturally to you, right? I think that comes with like
Yeah,
that responding to information like at face value, what's right in front of you.
yeah, and that's where the phrase mechanically inclined comes from. Is they're mechanically inclined. They can see it and understand how it works without studying it in depthly. And this is interesting. I don't know how far to take this one, but to explain how my brain works. There was a guy who came and spoke to a religious group that I was at. It was a evening fireside, and he had an afterlife experience that he was discussing. Basically, he had passed away in the hospital, and he went up he called it heaven. It wasn't heaven as he knew then, but he said he remembers looking around, and he always was obsessed with gardening. He was a gardener for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for his whole career. Did Temple Square garden and stuff, and he went up to heaven, and he said that he looked at a flower and he could see how everything was broken down and how it was created. That whole image of how it was created and put together went through his mind, and he could see how that flower was created. And ever since that was, 20 years ago when he spoke to this religious group. But that's how I see some machines. I can look at it and I can see how the pieces go together. And I've learned enough that I can see how they go together and how they work and how it makes it work just by looking at it. I can put the insides together in my brain without tearing it apart
Yeah.
for a lot of machines. And that's why I'm not afraid to work on cars. The car I just bought last year, it was a salvage title and it had suspension issues. I bought it and redid the entire suspension myself over the weekend. And that was $2,800 is what I was quoted to do that. And I did it myself in about 8 hours of work. But that's really what it came down. It took me like 15 hours because I had got pulled off and stuff, but really it took me 8 hours to do that. But I saved $2,800. But that's something I've always been willing to do since I was a kid. I started fixing my own bikes and building computers when I was a kid. But that's always in my personality type. I feel like that's always something I've liked doing. And we have cousins that are engineers and stuff, and I can talk to them and kind of understand what they're talking about. But at the same time, I can go talk to this cheerleader that doesn't understand any of that stuff and have a conversation with her.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I feel like my personality type and what I've learned in my experience has been able to help me adapt to both sides of that, the extremes. And
Yeah.
I think that's why I'm good at sales again, because I can adapt to people.
Yeah. Yeah. Whatever person you end up seeing in front of you, you've got a way to talk to them. Um, yeah. And for me, I'm a lot more likely to design, like engineer stuff than to walk up to something completely new and start working on it. Um, and so yeah, totally. I I think that's totally different. And I hated learning about cars actually because I prefer to ignore details until I can't ignore them any longer because I like to focus on the big picture and like skip past everything I can. And so one of the things I hate about cars is you like suddenly you can't ignore the details and then you can get screwed over if you don't know anything about how they work. So, and that's why I like electric cars. That's the most fundamental reason because they don't have very many parts, and so they're simple, and I don't have to worry about.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep. And that's one thing that I struggle with because I see electric cars. I know how gas engines work very well. I know how electric cars work very well. I lean conservative, but I have a really hard time with some of these people that push so hard against electric cars because if you know them, you know they're reliable. They're so basic. There's hardly anything that can go wrong. And electric motors last for years and years and years and hours and hours and hours without any problems because there's so few
they're
components that go
simple.
bad.
Yeah.
And so I have a really hard time with people that don't understand how things work and they're pushing against it just because that's what people they agree with do.
Yeah,
And
and actually
I like to study it out and figure it out myself.
a lot of the first people to really get into electric cars were like car mechanics. Like in California, there's like a big group of car enthusiasts and they love like playing with electric cars. Um, so yeah, it's kind of opposite how I thought it would be like 10 years ago, but it kind of makes sense in hindsight. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have four more questions, and three of them are from a friend. So I'm just gonna ask what he asked. So, but the first one is the last one I have, and that is generally the stereotype I have of, and you've already mentioned a lot of things from it, but for me, the stereotype for an ESTP is like a salesperson, um, and that seems to be like when you are uh, like doing what you do best. You're good at uh like selling stuff to people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um yeah, so
Yeah.
you've mentioned that a few times. But anyway, I wonder um all right. Let's just go straight to these other questions. So
Okay.
the first one is, how do you keep from pissing off people with your logic? Like, describe the best fight you've ever been in. What triggered it, and what and how did you resolve it?
Well, in sales in life, you find people that are unwilling to accept anything regardless of what it is, if it's different than their personality. I have had a few situations where we had to just agree to disagree and call it good. And they still thought that unfortunately made them think they were right. But there's a point where you got to stop arguing with people that just go in circles. I like having logical conversations. For cells, you try and pinpoint what they like. And even if you don't agree with it, you can agree with it then. Or you can say something, you don't have to counter it because that creates negativity. So if they say, oh, my last trailer, it had so many water leaks. I don't want to do anything to the next trailer. I don't have to worry about that. Every trailer's gonna have water leaks. And so you'd be like, oh yeah, they build them much better now, which they do, but you still have to maintain them. So I'll say there's always you build them much better. They are built much better than they used to be, especially the roofs. They're, a single piece of rubber roof versus layer or sections where they could leak. But you still do need to do a little bit of maintenance. It's way easier than it used to be, but you have to do a little bit of maintenance on them. But they're much better. So I try and eat in a little bit of logic when I'm talking to them. Make sure they understand. Make sure the expectations. Really, it's about expectations in sales, and a lot of
Yeah.
conversations. You set the right expectations, but
What what
I,
happened
I don't
what
know.
happened earlier in your life before you learned how to deal with illogical people? Like how did you learn
On my
those things?
mission,
Well, just anytime. Like what were some important points where you learned that you needed to handle people more sensitively, I guess?
um,
You
there
don't have to go
was,
into a ton of
well,
detail.
no, there was, well, before, back when I was 18, just after high school, there was a girl that liked me, and I had the impression that she didn't want to be too serious, but she was actually the opposite. And I didn't want to make it seem like I wanted her attention, but I didn't want to be too serious. I didn't want her to think I was too serious and I was pressuring her. We weren't on the same page. We didn't communicate. I was being dumb at the time. And so instead of figuring out what it was, I just decided to buy a couple girls flowers because we weren't dating yet, but I wanted to date her. So I wanted to impress her, but I didn't want her to think she was the only person I was trying to impress because I didn't want to push her away.
Hmm.
So I bought flowers and delivered them to like three different girls. And I told her that, and it really hurt her feelings that I delivered flowers to other girls too. And so, and I worked with her. And so, like, the next time we worked together, she told me it really hurt her feelings. And I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't know, but I basically like it ended kind of bad because I didn't really defend my thought process behind it. She was just hurt and didn't want to really talk to me a whole lot. And I was not good at defending my position or even describing my position then. And so I've gotten a lot better at communicating. One, expectations were definitely not set because we didn't even talk about it. But now if you don't communicate and you just leave it as is, chances are feelings will stay hurt and it's never going to get resolved. So I learned from those early experiences, that one in particular, that if I would have talked to her, we probably would have figured it out. But I just shut up and didn't say anything because in the moment, I didn't know what to say. And so I just didn't say anything. And that was probably worse than trying to figure it out. So I learned from that early on. And then that same thing happened when I was serving a mission in Japan. My mission president said a whole bunch of things that weren't true, and I just sat there and took it instead of actually talking to him and explaining my side. I just took it, but I did learn from those experiences that well, there are situations where you just need to take it. The person you're talking to, if they're really strong-headed, you're not going to change their opinion. So there is times where you need to shut up, and I learned that. But there are also times where you need to defend yourself, and I also learned when I need to defend myself and stand up for myself, especially in a corporate world where you're working and money's involved and it's a job. You have to be able to defend yourself and your reason behind it instead of just taking it. Otherwise, you won't make it very far.
And so what the reason you didn't or the reason you didn't defend yourself before, is it because you're trying to avoid hurting feelings or causing conflict or something like that? Or
With the girl, I was just blank and didn't know what to say in the moment. That was a big part of it. And I've worked through that situation several times in my head since then, but I know now what I would do. But then I honestly didn't know what to say because I didn't want to be like, well, I like you, but I didn't want you to think I liked you too much. I didn't, that would have been really easy to say, but I didn't say that and I should have. But um I don't know. It's been a lot of experiences that have kind of molded the way my brain thinks and different people, but I don't know. It's
yeah,
definitely changed.
yeah. Okay. So let's go to the next question. It's It seems like ESTPs effortlessly move towards their goals like breathing. How do you manage your fears around the goals you set for yourself? Like, what's it like to hit roadblocks? Do you just work around them, or do you have an experience you can share where you overcame something difficult that you wanted?
Um, yeah. So my mindset's always been if it fails, that's not the end of it, where some people completely shut down when it fails. So my mindset is there's another way to do it or we'll figure it out. Um, with we started flipping houses in 2017 and our third house we lost $10,000 on. Um, I know a few people that flipped houses and they lost money and they never did it again. um, I learned from that experience. We changed how we were managing it, and we did the next year. We was our best year, or well, our second best year. COVID was our best year, but our next year, so we lost $10,000 on that. The next one, we made $40,000 on it. But if I would have quit on that $10,000 one, we wouldn't have made that, and we made $250,000 in COVID on the houses we did then. And so, if I would have just quit on that one house, then I've learned a lot. Long story short, we lost a lot after the COVID, but but obviously a lot of people lost a lot after COVID. But if I would have quit at 10,000, there's a lot of money, a lot of opportunities, and a lot of experience I would have missed had I just quit at that time. And so my mindset at the time was, okay, we're not going to do that again. We're going to do it this way. And so I created a different game plan and learned from what failed, and we didn't do that again.
Okay. Um, I wonder about this question. So we're almost out of time, but I wonder about this question because the person who's asking is an ENTP, and so he's like the same type as you, but intuitive instead of sensing. So more theoretical, a little less practical. And I guess it might be coming from a place where he's wondering how you don't stress about accomplishing the goals. Like it seems like to him, uh, the your type of personality tends to just move towards goals without effort. What do you think?
No, that's
Okay.
that's not true at all. I do struggle with goals. Actually, I've struggled with goals my whole life because I have ADHD and I forget what I'm doing half the time. And so I have to, in order to do that, I have to plan my activities. I have to focus on what my goal is and actually work towards it. It's easier for me to do some things than other things. Like making a cell, I will tell myself before I go into a cell that I'm going to make it, and chances are I make it. But if I go in and I'm not really there, then I probably won't make the cell. I have to plan ahead of time to make the cell, and then that changes my mindset while I'm working on it. And I mindset honestly is the biggest thing. Is your attitude or your perceived attitude going into a situation is going to affect how that situation is almost every time. So
Yeah.
I've learned that some goals are easy for me to do. I can walk up to a car and change the oil. That's not even a goal anymore. That's just something I can just do. Um, Success has come easy because I'm good with working with people, but it's also been really hard to maintain success without planning and analyzing things. So I have to
Yeah.
plan and analyze to maintain it. I can make something happen, but then I'm right back in the same situation when the money runs out, unless I figure out how to plan and make it happen again and continue making it happen. So there's
Yeah.
definitely more analyzing that you need to do to make it happen. But I also have the attitude that anybody can do anything, and all it is work. If you get out and work, then you're going to make it happen, and that's what it
Yeah.
comes down to.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I'm not 100% sure what he meant with his question because I don't really know anybody who achieves their goals without effort. But
Yeah. I kind of understand what he's saying. There are some sales guys that are really dumb, but they're really successful. They don't understand mechanical stuff at all, but they can sell stuff. Like they know conversations and people so well that they can sell it even if they don't know the product hardly at all. That really
yeah.
bothers me because then they're just using sales skills, and that's always bothered me because I don't. They're too dumb to learn anything else, in my opinion. But they're successful, and that type of person. That's not me. I can be that person. I can just go in and do sales skills and sell anything I want to someone. But that's not my nature. I want it to be the best for them as well.
And
And so
then you
I
come
I
back.
find out why the product can help them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's a short term versus long term mentality.
exactly.
Um, yeah. And yeah, one little thing I don't want I hesitate to point it out because people don't like when you point out their mannerisms, but one thing that's typical of like extroverted perceivers is that I've heard and that I think is true as I've paid attention is like when they're thinking they tend to move their eyes around a lot, whereas like a introverted perceivers tend to move their heads as well. Like I do a lot of this when I'm thinking, but I tend to like move my head when but you know, extroverted perceivers, their eyes kind of go all over the place, and that's what you were doing when you were thinking. So that's kind of
Yeah,
interesting. Um, anyway,
looking for the thought.
yeah. I'm waiting for it to enter my head. Um, so okay. Third question, and last one. With so many institutions focused on morality, how do you negotiate staying on the right side of the line between all the groups and all the rules? Like, would you be willing to share an experience where somebody said you broke the rules and you had to deal with it? Maybe this is coming from a stereotype that ESTPs tend to not like rules, and then we have a lot of conflicting groups with conflicting rules. You have to figure out how to navigate it. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think that goes along with the entrepreneurial side of things and thinking outside the box. Rules to some of them are restrictions of in the place. They're obstacles they have to get through to accomplish what they want. Um, and some of them will throw morality completely out the window to get there. And but that I mean that's for me personally, that's not my nature. I like I will go as far as I can right to the edge of the rule, but I won't cross it. But I'll do what I need to accomplish what I want to without breaking the rules. And that's where I am. And some people they stay as far away from that line as possible. They're very cautious. They're very sensitive to things. That's not my personality type. I will push as hard as I can to the edge of the line. I won't cross it. I will never cross it. Um, One, if you're untrustworthy, dishonest, you're worthless to the human race, and that's how I view it. You have no value to the human race if you're not trustworthy. And so that goes along with I actually butt heads with a lot of salespeople and a lot of sales managers because they will say things that aren't true to get the sell, and I've never liked doing that. I can figure out how to make it happen without bending the truth, and that's where I like to be. There are people that will bend the truth and they'll skirt those rules, and part of that goes is they just want to accomplish what they want to accomplish regardless of what's in the way.
Yeah.
I have boundaries, of course. I won't compromise another human being to get what I want unless they really deserve it.
Unless they themselves have no value to the human race.
If they're in that position, then maybe I'll my mindset changes and I need to teach them a lesson. But that's 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 not what we're talking about. But still, that's a different conversation for another day. But
I feel the same, by the way.
yes,
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for taking the time. I'll stop recording in a second. I don't know how many views this is gonna get. I vary between like 5 and 1,000 views on this channel. So I don't think there are a ton of people with your personality type looking for videos like this, but uh like uh but you know, you never know. Somebody might be interested from whatever angle that I can't predict. Um and sometimes random videos do really well that I don't understand. So but I appreciate the time anyway. And there may be opportunities for future conversations. Like it might be interesting to have you and this other guy in the same conversation because you know you have similar personalities, but he's more of the theoretical side, so it'd be kind of fun to see contrast. But anyway,
yeah,
yeah. So thanks.
sounds
Any
good.
last
Yeah,
words?
no, it's been fun.
Okay, cool. All right,
Okay,
thanks. I'm
all
gonna
right,
stop recording.
bye.